Okay, so I think most of us in business would agree that business is really about relationships, about people, and we actually like to do business with people that we like. It's just a natural human tendency, and they've done studies that show that the amount of money you make is directly a direct correlation to the number of people in your network, people etc. In business. And so it's not only super important in business, but in life, as you know. Getting somebody to like you is a critical human skill. And, we all have a natural, innate ability to do that. And but sometimes we don't realize what we're doing. And, in sales in particular, when we're trying to relate with somebody or in business negotiation, anything, if we can come up with ways that we know and get into habits that we know work all the time that are excellent, that people can't, help but like us. I mean, that's huge, right? So, again, sales is about persuasion. And so it's about persuading other people to do something that's in their best interest. It's not about convincing somebody to do something that is, in the best interest of the salesperson, which unfortunately is, what a lot of salespeople approach it as. But so if we focus on persuasion, what's the sort of the basis for that? Well, to persuade somebody, good luck if that person doesn't like you, because you're not going to persuade them very much. So let's talk about how we do that. And I just came up with some of the bigger things that have helped me over the years in sales and marketing, in 25 years of doing this, things that jump out at me and things that have worked so well that if you implement some of these ideas, I think that you're going to see a huge difference in your ability to relate to people and to create that rapport quickly, which is what we're talking about, rapport or liking. So I'm just going to go through these in no particular order, but let's talk about one of the most basic ones. And this one, you're going to laugh, but this one is so critical, and yet every day I see salespeople and they don't do it, and yet it can have a huge impact. So that's use somebody's name. So, we all love the sound of our own name. I've forgotten how that quote goes, but something like the sweetest thing in any language is the sound of our own name. And it's true, as humans, that we have an identity and our own little world, and our name, is all part of that. And so we love hearing it. We can't help it. It's psychologically. All of us, universally love hearing our own name. And so, what do we do when we help somebody and we're talking to them in a sales situation, over the phone, in person, whatever? Even there's a reason that, an email that is personalized that says, Dear Bob or Dear Mary is better than one that just says, Dear Customer, because it's impersonal. People like a personal feel. So when we're talking to somebody, again, over the phone or online, how would we do it? We always want to try to use their name, and we don't want to use it just once. This is what, I've seen over the years with salespeople is they'll start off a 30-minute conversation and they'll say, Hey, Bob. So, hey, nice to meet you, whatever. And they'll never mention Bob's name again. And yet, what's the most effective thing to do? Start off the conversation, mention the person's name, and keep using it. It's preferred to be able to use their first name. But, in some situations, you have to kind of move into that. If they're a title person, they're a doctor, let's say, you probably don't want to walk in there and go, Hey, Bob or Hey, Mary. You want to get to that eventually as their defenses start to come down. You can transition to that. But that's always the preferred way to do it. But the point is, you've got to use their name over and over again. So you may start the conversation, Hey, Bob, it's great to meet you, whatever, So, Bob, tell me about what's going on in your business, Oh, so, Bob, you're saying that, this is something that you're having a problem with right now, that you've been frustrated with in the past? Okay. So, Bob, let me ask you, when you've used other solutions in the past, what's worked for you? What hasn't worked? So, Bob, that makes me think about, a client we had a while back who had this, blah, 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 blah. And you get where I'm going here? I'm using his name almost every time I open my mouth. I'm using his name. And, it sounds like, you're going to sit there and think, geez, this sounds weird, it doesn't, the person's going to think, why are you using my name so much? Trust me, I have never had somebody look at me funny or thought, geez, why is this guy using my name so much? People love it. We can't help it. Again, it's a subconscious thing. So make a conscious effort, and it's going to sound weird at first. It's going to be a little uncomfortable because you haven't done it before, but try it. It really makes a difference. And the next one's more of a category because it's kind of its own specialty, or there's so much into it. You can really get into the woods on this one. I think I originally read about this when I was probably in my early 90s. Tony Robbins, talked about it, and it was the neuro-linguistic programming and how our brain works with speech and everything. And, we'll talk about a couple different examples of this, but mirroring and matching is basically a way of subconsciously telling the other person that you are like them. Because again, if the other person thinks that, oh, this person's like me, they're much more open to the idea of being persuaded and listening to our ideas. Whereas if they think, this person is nothing like me, and they're going to think, I don't even really like this person, good luck trying to present your ideas to that person. So what do we do when we mirror and match somebody? One of the easy examples, we're talking about body language first. If you're in front of somebody, you're sitting down with them, you have a prospect who's sitting in a chair across from you, you're sitting there, and you're chatting away or whatever, doing your thing, and the person just sits there and they cross their legs, for instance. And so what do? Cross your legs, not right away, but maybe 10 or 15 seconds later. You do that. And then, they'll, later on in the conversation, they might go, I don't know about this or whatever, they're putting their hand up on their neck. And so what do? 15 seconds later, put your hand up in your head, not on the same spot necessarily, although you could, but, put it up in your head or whatever. They lean back and they cross their arms like this. They change their tone of voice or whatever. Again, 10, 15 seconds later, what do? Lean back in your chair and kind of match what their tone of voice is. And you keep doing that for a while, and you can literally feel the change in the relationship and the conversation. They will start to warm up with you over time. And what's hilarious, if you think about it, is just like using somebody's name. You feel like, oh my gosh, they're going to catch me. They're going to go, why is he leaning back when I just lean back? Why is he touching, his hair? Why is she, doing that? That's why is she copying me? And guess what? They won't ever, because people don't even know. If you do it like right away, they cross their legs, you cross theirs, then you have more likely that they're going to go, okay, that was weird. When you're a kid and your sister or brother is copying you, that's pretty obvious. But if you leave a lull in there, a pause in between, you will never get caught. I have never had somebody say to me, well, why do you just lean back when I lean back? But you actually will see the physical response to somebody. You'll see them physically warm up to you, and you'll notice it, and Tony Robbins talked about this, I remember originally, that you can take this so far, you can create such good rapport with somebody that you not only can do the mirroring and matching, but you can actually start leading them. After a while, once you've created that connection with somebody, and you're kind of mirroring and matching with them, then creating that rapport, then all of a sudden you can do this. And then you'll watch, sure enough, a few seconds later, they'll do this, or they'll do something, in a similar manner, because all of a sudden they're like you and they want to continue to be like you. And so their subconscious is kind of keeping pace with you. So it's as I said, it's amazing science. It's just kind of a, quick overview, but, to give you a practical example, and, this goes into voice as well. I'll talk about that in a second, but when I was a kid at West Point, I wasn't the best student by any means. I think I got 1A in all 4 years I was there, I think, and it was in this English class where the professor was this caricature of a, special forces Rambo tough guy, buzz cut, all buffed out. He would just move around, like real strong, and he would bark things, his order. His whole demeanor was, tough guy. And, it was about this time that I was reading, some of these books, like I said, the Tony Robbins thing and other stuff about NLP and matching. And I thought, geez, because I would see him just eat people alive in class. And I thought, I wonder if this stuff works, So what I started doing was, I started out in the class just being my normal personality. But then after a while, I said, let's try this out. And so here's this guy. He would, call on me and ask a question, hey, Paul, and raise his voice, gruff, fast, aggressive. And so instead of saying, yes, sir, well, the answer is this, I would say, yes, sir, well, the answer is this, and And, of course, first time, nothing. But over time, when I started doing that, the more he called on me, the more I answered that way. I'm telling you, you could literally see him warm up. And, I'm not saying that that's the reason I got the A in the class, but it sure didn't hurt. But I could see that he actually liked me over time. And it wasn't because of my shining personality. It was because he started to think, well, I'm like him, same tone of voice, same body language. And so it works. Trust me, try this and you'll see how much it works. So in addition to physically using our body, it also applies to voice. So if somebody is a fast speaker, they're from New York, and they, well, I don't know about the solution because this, versus somebody who's from the deep South in Alabama, they're, well, I don't know, more soft-spoken, and, I'd like to think about this, and I'm not sure. I guarantee those two people are not going to get along. In fact, normally people from the Northeast, if they're talking to somebody in the Deep South, they think, what's wrong with this person? This person's an idiot. They're talking too slow. They can't get words out, when that's not the case at all. And the same thing, the person in the South is talking to this person in the Northeast and going, boy, this person's a jerk. They talk too fast and blah, blah, blah. But if the person on the other end of the phone can match that person, so somebody from the Deep South can change their voice to relate to that person in the Northeast, all of a sudden they're able to create that rapport again that allows them to say, oh, hey, this person's like me, instead of this person's a dummy. And so you can literally change it. It's kind of like you've got to learn to act a little bit. And again, it's not putting up and say, well, that's not me or whatever, Well, it's great. Which would you rather have? Would you rather relate to another human being and help them through the sales process because you're actually doing it to help them? Or get your ego out of the way and say, I'm going to let them know that I'm like them, even though I may not naturally speak the way they do. And I'm going to let them lower their defenses. So it's worth a little effort. And again, you will never get caught doing it. It is the funniest thing, but you're going to feel weird doing it, but use your tone of voice, the rate of your speech, all those things. And, it's not going to happen overnight. It's something you got to practice over time. But as you can hear it on a conversation, you can make little changes in your speed and your tone of voice, all that good stuff. And so that's in person over the phone. And, what do you do online? Obviously you don't have body language, you don't even have speech and, and that sort of thing. So what the goal is try to, find out, if you know your perfect prospect profile, if you know what they're like, what their fears are, what their challenges are, what they're interested in, the profile of that person, then you can figure out a way to sort of relate to them by sort of addressing those things on that, on that web page, for instance, either through a testimonial, hey, Bob or Mary was in the same position, she had the same, issues as you do, to the person viewing the web page, she was, a homeschool mom, and, if you're trying to sell homeschool supplies, and she was a homeschool mom, and she had, she was so busy, she had retired from her corporate job, so that she could raise her children, and so, but she didn't know how to be a teacher, and all the things that maybe a homeschool mom would be interested in, that would say, hey, that person's just like me, with a testimonial, and then address those things throughout, the part of your web page. So, again, it's all about getting somebody to like you. And then, another one, compliments. This sounds so funny again, but this is all about human psychology. We all love compliments, and any guy who has been successful in dating and getting women, to like him, so to speak, knows that compliments, and anybody who's married probably knows that compliments are a big thing. But it's not just women; it's people in general. We love, that praise. We've grown up our whole life as children, with authority figures praising us for doing what they wanted us to do, for getting good grades or listening in class or doing whatever, and we learn to suck in that praise, and we love that. And adults are no different. And so if we can use that, we can use some sort of praise that suddenly makes that person go, oh yeah, I like that person because they just made me feel good. The problem is that unfortunately there's people that try to use this, and we've all had people that, and this is where it comes from, the, kiss and butt type of thing, so to speak. When you can tell somebody is giving you a compliment, they don't really mean it. They're just saying it, to try to get something from you. And so a compliment has to be sincere. And so how do you do that? Because sometimes it's obvious, you can tell somebody something and it's, it's obvious and it's legitimate and it's genuine. But, what do you do if it's, it's kind of hard? You're not sure. If I guarantee you, if you think about it, you can always come up with something that you like about somebody. It doesn't have to be an obvious compliment. Again, example, when I was a cadet at West Point, the West Point motto is a cadet will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. And so, sometimes we would go to dinner at a senior officer's house. Their spouse would cook, something. And let's face it, we've all been in a meal at a guest at somebody's house or whatever. And, you bite into that food and you're like, oh, this is awful, and so what do you do, so of course we're under extra pressure to, of course, thank and compliment, the spouse, whoever made the food. But what do you do if you hate it, or it's just disgusting? Well, you can't say, oh, that was really good, thank you, because then you'd be lying. So, and it's not genuine. What you could say is, boy, and they even had classes on how to do this. You'd have to say, geez, it's been a long time since I've had a home cooked meal. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. Again, you're being genuine. You're not lying. And so whenever you're giving somebody a compliment, it's got to be genuine. And if you put enough thought into it, you can always find something that you like about somebody. And I guarantee they will like you. And once again, you will not get caught complimenting somebody. Somebody will never say, geez, I wish you wouldn't have told me, how much you admire, what I've done with this company. It's just natural humans. We crave it and we love it. So, and then the last thing is, I would say, for lack of a better term, repeated exposure. And this is one of those things in sales, if you've ever heard the, well, you got to get 6 no's to get a yes, or 8 no's to get it, whatever it is. The idea is that you got to keep talking to somebody to get through all their objections or whatever. But, even bigger than that, in my opinion, and why it works so well is because if you stay in touch with somebody over time, you become familiar to them. As humans, we don't like things that are not familiar to us. We don't like things that are strange or different. Because they're kind of a threat at a primal level. But when we start seeing something that's familiar with us over and over and over again, it's why branding is a big thing with large corporations. What do? They have, they repeatedly stick their brand in front of somebody, so you get familiar with it over time, and you just kind of can't help but kind of like it, or at least have a neutral feeling. You don't dislike it necessarily unless you have a reason to. So, it's the same thing with people. If we can stay in front of somebody, and this is where follow-up becomes so critical, that, again, a lot of salespeople fail in this area. But not only does it put you in front of them at the right time, but it also allows you to create that rapport over time just by familiarity. There's a reason that emails that start out, Dear Mary or Dear Bob or whatever are better than an email that says Dear Customer. Because, again, it's personalized, it's using the name again, like we talked about, and it's a familiarization thing over time because, again, it works. So, if you use any of these, you're gonna see a difference. You can literally see it. When you're doing it in person, in particular, over the phone, you can hear it and you can see the actions, online. But if you can see the change in the state of the person. And that helps, immensely in the HSC process, what we talked about in other videos, when you're telling stories, when you're shifting beliefs. If you can create that rapport, it brings down those defenses and allows you to actually have a conversation with somebody that doesn't have these huge walls, that you've brought down their defenses a little bit. They're actually listening and open to what you're saying. So don't take this for granted. These seem obvious, but if you start using one of them, or more, and you start specifically thinking about that when you're in conversation with somebody, you will see it pay off, and I guarantee it'll pay off in more sales. So I hope this is helpful to you today. Please subscribe and rate the channel and comment, do all that YouTube stuff, like the channel. Really appreciate it, and hope this is helpful, and I will see you on the next video.